Hey everyone, welcome back to the Safety Gap podcast, where we explore the innovations and partnerships that are changing the game in emergency response and helping close the safety gap in our communities. Today, we're talking about school safety with Ryan Bennett, head of crisis alert at CENTEGIX. CENTEGIX equips teachers and staff with discrete wearable badges that instantly trigger alerts, ensuring first responders get accurate, room level location data when every second matters. We explore how this technology integrates with Rapid SOS, the impact of instant communication in emergencies, and what's next for school safety. Whether you're a school administrator, a parent, or passionate about safety innovation, this is an episode you won't want to miss. So let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody, to the Safety Gap podcast. This is your co-host, Cassidy, also with my co-host, Karen. Karen, how are you doing?
Good. It is Friday.
It is Friday.
Very exciting.
And we all know Karen is usually traveling every week, but so was I this week, and I got to see Karen face to face, which was a pleasure.
Yes, it's great. Good old Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth, Texas. Good trip. Good trip. And I want to welcome our guest, Ryan Bennett. Ryan's the head of the crisis alert product at CENTEGIX. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
It's going well. It's going well. Thank you for taking your time on this Friday afternoon, and look forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Happy to do so.
Let's just jump right in. What I'd love for you to do is just give us a little bit of background on CENTEGIX yourself and the crisis alert product.
Yeah, absolutely. So CENTEGIX, we kind of run by this North Star of every second matters. And we have our crisis alert badge and push button and help comes. And that's really what we try to focus on, is looking for ways to continue to improve reducing the amount of time it takes to respond to an incident and giving as much situational awareness as possible to responders as we do that. I joined the organization in July of last year, and it's been a phenomenal time so far, and I've learned a ton. We have an amazing team that we work with, and I think we've been able to accomplish a lot of good stuff, and we're going to continue to accomplish good stuff going forward. I think it's a pretty exciting product and a pretty exciting company to be part of.
Yeah, and for the audience, it'd be great to give us a little bit about CENTEGIX holistically as a company. Who are you guys? What you do? How did you guys start? Like, I always love the founder story, the starting story of a company.
Yeah. The origin story is definitely interesting. Our founder, Daniel Dooley, started the company in 2015, and it was really focused on the concept of remote learning and cameras in classrooms. It was kind of ahead of its time, probably about 5 years ahead of its time, interestingly enough. And during COVID, it definitely got into a bit of more prominence. But interestingly, in 2018, there was the Parkland tragedy, and there were a lot of learnings from that. But one of the learnings was we saw a opportunity in the market to provide a faster way to respond to incidents. The camera product was great, but we kind of learned that the camera product didn't provide enough response fast enough. Part of the camera product's original goal was to provide a way for teachers to signal, hey, I need some help, in a different way than like calling the intercom and asking for help from the administration. So we began looking for a way to really reduce that time, and the concept kind of moved towards the badge and a prototype of that. And by 2018, the end of 2018, we launched CENTEGIX Crisis Alert, and kind of just took off from there. I think from the first time it was demoed, it was extremely intriguing and popular to a lot of school districts. And we began bringing on some larger school districts as customers. And now it's kind of exploded, to be honest. We now have a crisis alert in about 12,000 locations, protects about 10 million people in 43 states. We've got 4 of the 10 largest school districts using it and 20 of the largest 100 districts. So it's been really exciting to see how fast this has really grown.
That's, I didn't realize those numbers. That's extremely impressive. Obviously, it feels like the panic button concept, for those who may not have known about this, has been around for a while, as you mentioned. But it's starting just to become, I would say, mainstream in conversations. If I think about parents in schools and like this notion of like, there is this thing called a panic button. And you mentioned yours is kind of like a badge.
Right.
Could you describe like what physical, what is this? Like, what do I do as a teacher?
here.
Do I wear this thing? Do I keep it in my pocket?
Yeah, so I've got my demo badge over here as I drop stuff. So this is what the badge looks like, and it's very easy to use. You pretty much put it on a lanyard. Usually, you've got your school ID over it to protect the button, but really easy to just grab and begin using it if you need it in a time of emergency. We train everybody. It's 3 clicks on the button, and you'll feel like a vibration feedback when you click on it 3 times to let you know that, hey, we've received the message and we're on the way. And that's really used for, let's call it an internal staff alert. So a situation where maybe there is a physical altercation or a behavior issue or something along those lines, where it's really the internal administration that needs to respond and somebody needs help. If there's an incident that requires outside public service agency to come in and help, law enforcement, ambulance, EMTs, if you click the badge 8 times, it will vibrate again and let you know for a second time, okay, now we've received this. And that kicks off a different workflow that allows us to then interact with 911 centers and real-time crime centers using products like Rapid SOS that we integrate with to immediately alert that, hey, we need help and we need help at this location. When the badge gets clicked, when we go into a school, we actually install a large amount of hardware, beacons, strobes, and we use a private wireless network to do that. So it's not Wi-Fi, it's completely private, it's 100% always accessible, completely online, always backed up, even in the case of a power failure. And it provides room level accuracy. So we can tell exactly what room you're in and exactly what floor you're on. And we send all of that information to responders as well as administration through our app, through the integrations that we have, and basically provides a pretty deep level of situational awareness to know exactly where help is needed at any given time. So that's how it works, and it's very, very effective.
So I have this badge lanyard, which you're going to wear anyway, as a teacher.
Right.
And Cassidy Jr. gets in a fight in the classroom, and you hit it 3 times.
Yep.
And somebody comes and helps break it up. And then 8 times it goes to 911 emergency response.
Exactly.
Well, I'm just curious, why 8? Is that how do we come up with that number?
When we train our customers and new users how to do this, we really tell them, hey, just keep pushing the button. It's 3 times, it's kind of discreet and it's a quick press and we know it's internal. But if it really is an emergency situation, we just tell them, just keep pushing the button until you can't push it anymore. 8 times is kind of a number that we found makes sure that we prevent inadvertent presses, especially if you're wearing the badge and maybe leaning up against something. But at the same time, enough presses that if you just keep pressing the badge until you feel comfortable that help is going to come, you're going to pass that number eventually. So that's kind of where we came up with that.
Yeah, it makes sense, because it seems there's a lot of concern about inadvertent calls to 911. And turn that over to Karen. Karen, it'd be great. So the button gets hit 8 times. I learned something here too in terms of the private network, and Ryan, you pointed out why, and that is so you can get room level access. Karen, I'd love you to, what happens on the public safety side? How do we use this information coming from the system when the button is pressed? 8 times?
First of all, it's really great that there's that contextual information about where the teacher is, down to the room level, down to the floor level. So all of this stuff happens, at the school, at the site, and then in Rapid SOS pops in some information that there's a big emergency at this school, and it gives us all of that contextual location beyond just what's the name of the school, what's the address of the school, where did the button go off, what floor was it, so we can really start directing resources to the right place as quickly as possible. And then we now have some new features rolling out with multi-agency notification and the ability for agencies to also share and chat and collaborate together. So one simple, agency in 911 center doesn't handle a school incident alone. They're always responding with other agencies. And so I think that is really important. We, have learned from many different types of incidents since 2001, since even Columbine, and many other events, that interoperability is one of the greatest challenges in communication. So the ability to know exactly where, when this occurs, and the ability to collaborate and communicate with our neighboring agencies so we can respond in, roll in, all informed with the same level of information.
Yeah, we often get asked these questions. I'm going to go back to you here in a second, Ryan, about why can't you just place a phone call and so forth and so on, which obviously does happen and you should if you can. But one of the things that struck me was just this idea of schools can be massive. So understanding, do I need to go through the north door, the south door, the west wing, the school building out back or whatever? I assume, Karen, is immensely valuable.
So valuable. So I remember in the time when I was a 911 telecommunicator, you'd get an emergency at the school and you get the business address. And that plot is going to typically be at the front entrance or front, side of the building. But if that student is having a medical emergency and there is a completely separate parking lot on the backside that has the best access to it, I need my responders to know. And that could be a separate fire and EMS jurisdiction responding to the back parking lot or to another campus. So just having that critical, accurate location as quickly as possible is ensuring that the right resource, the right number of resources, and that they're coming into the scene at the right location to make the most impact for that save.
Yeah. And then, Ryan, with that, I feel like there's a growing number of these solutions in this school safety space. And my hunch is most schools aren't experts in buying this type of technology. So I'd love it. How does this conversation happen with schools? How do you talk about, obviously you want to sell your products, but like, how do you help them understand what capabilities are important, what things you should be factoring into your decision when it comes to like deciding what type of technology is right for a given school?
Yeah, a lot of the way that we do that is comparatively with other solutions that are out there on the market. And a lot of the leading solutions out there are mobile app based. So it would be a situation where you open your phone, you open an app, and then there's a panic button, a virtual panic button on your phone that you press. And what we've impressed upon those that are looking into solutions like that are that if you have a wearable panic button, like a badge, it's always there. It's just very simple to grab the badge, push the button, and immediately begin the help process. If you're using a phone, a lot of times, especially if you're a teacher, you don't have your phone on your person. It's in your desk, it's in a purse or a bag. It's not immediately available. And so then you have to go and you have to unlock it and find the app and push the button. And even at that point, you're really only sending a GPS location. So it's a pretty general location of the area that you're in, but it's not necessarily descriptive of, is this the hallway next to the media center? Is this on the third floor? It's just kind of a GPS location. So because of the differentiation in our solution that we have hardware at the school, we can provide that information. And it's interesting because most incidents that happen in schools actually don't happen directly in the classroom. They usually happen in a common area, a hallway, something along those lines. And so it's kind of difficult to discern via just pure GPS coordinates. Is this happening in the hallway or is this happening inside someone's classroom? So that's definitely helpful. Another thing that we talk about is the availability of the actual service of the signal itself. We've seen time and time again in critical situations where the telecommunications infrastructure will become really clogged. You won't be able to get a call out. You won't be able to get a text out. Data via mobile devices will drop off because of how much usage is happening at a tower nearby the school because something is going on. With the way that we have our system organized, it's completely separate from all of that. So it will always ensure that when you push that button, that someone's going to be notified and response is going to occur in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm just curious. This might be a little bit of a tangent, but once you have a private network in the school, I assume this opens up other opportunities in terms of technology, partner solutions, et cetera,
Absolutely.
especially given the granular level of detail in terms of floors and
Yeah.
rooms and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. An example of that is our visitor management product. So we have a feature of our management project. We call it bleh. We call it enhanced visitor management. And it allows our visitors to basically be assigned a badge similar to the crisis alert badge. It just doesn't have a button. And it allows us to be able to track where visitors are throughout the facility. And essentially, what that gives us is a few different things. A, we can tell if a visitor is in a place they should or shouldn't be based off of how they checked in and what their purpose for the visit is. And another thing it helps us with is if there is an emergency, we can locate where those visitors are and include those in our response management plan to ensure that if there's an evacuation or a lockdown, that they're also accounted for in those situations.
Yeah, accountability is so important in making sure that we check off that we've accounted for every person that was in this building after an incident's occurred in that reunification piece, right?
Hmm.
How do you handle the conversations with, and this could be for any panic button. I'm just curious, like you click the button and let's assume you get a fairly accurate location. How do you know though that's where the incident is? And how does that get communicated, whether within the building to 911,
Yeah.
etc.?
Yeah, so there's a few ways that we handle that. Within our own product, we handle that through a few first party applications that we have. We have a mobile application, a web application, and a desktop application. The desktop application gets installed on all of the computers and laptops within the school. And when there is an alert, especially one of those 8-click campus threat type of alerts, we actually initiate a desktop takeover. So all of the computer screens in the school, whether they're projected on a whiteboard or they're just in an administration office, immediately switch over to provide information as to exactly what's occurring and gives an opportunity to explain what should happen in that situation, what action should be taken. So that's the first place. Additionally, if you're a responder and you're logged in, it provides immediate desktop notifications, providing the name of the person who clicked the badge, where the location of the alert is, what type of alert is it? Is it a campus threat? Is it a medical emergency? Is it just a staff alert and somebody just needs help within the building? That same information goes to the mobile application as well. And those are just sent via push notifications. So if they have their phone locked, it comes up and it's a very loud alarm sound. It's very hard to miss it. And when you open any of those applications, you're able to see the alert and click in, and you'll get a interactive map. And so you'll have an interactive map with an interactive floor plan of the school itself, and you're able to switch floors as needed. It'll provide a map pin that shows exactly the location of where the badge was clicked, as well as information around if there are safety assets nearby that may be useful in the response. We have a product called Safety Blueprint that allows our customers to control what their maps look like and manage the assets within their schools and place them in geographically specific locations. And so at any given time, you can see, well, there's a fire extinguisher 15 feet from the location, or there's an AED 30 feet from this location, or maybe the closest one's downstairs, and I'll let you know that too. So that's kind of how we get that information out with our products. When it comes to rapid SOS and getting that information to 911 centers and real-time crime centers, we send similar information, who clicked the badge, roughly where that information was at. We actually send along an image of the map that you would see in the application that shows up in the rapid SOS console that provides similar information as far as the location where assets might be that could be distributed to law enforcement or EMTs or medical personnel that are responding. We provide the GPS location of exactly where it is, the address, the phone number of who clicked the badge. So a text message can be started or a phone call, if necessary, can be initiated. So all of that information goes out to those centers as well.
And Karen, not to lead the witness here, but I assume that's information's pretty valuable in 911 to have all that.
Yeah, pretty darn critical. I mean, you think about a telecommunicator kind of sitting there answering these calls from schools or panic buttons. They're having to kind of create in their mind what it might look like because they don't easily have access to indoor blueprints and maps. So the more accurate information that comes with that emergency call helps them also visualize where my responders are going, what those rooms might look like, maybe even how many additional responders might we need as we're requesting other resources from other areas. So, like, gosh, the map is such a great visualization of that location, and being able to have that intelligence and not making it up in my head of what it could potentially look like. It's huge.
Coming from the outside, for those who might be listening to this who aren't experts in 911, accurate location on a map, type of emergency, these things are
Who?
all pretty fundamental. Who? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's already answering the questions that we're asking. So we might ask them anyway, because that's part of our, our process and for QA and things like that. But I think it's also fascinating for our 911 audience to just learn about what happens in the school, what actions are taken, like the computer takeover piece. Like, to me, that's fascinating. And when emergencies happen, I'm always trying to think through what's going on site, and I don't have to imagine now because I'm learning all of this. And it's really cool for me to also hear those actions.
Yeah, that was also new to me too. I think that's great. I mean, how you do that, and obviously having your own network in the school allows you or affords you the ability to do that. I'm sure much more easily than tapping into
Yeah.
the Wi-Fi network. How Ryan, this sounds great. And as a parent of kids who are in middle school and grade school, obviously we want our schools to have this technology. And you mentioned you're in 12,000 schools, which is tremendous. Where do you think the state of this technology is in kind of K through 12 in general? If you think about the country, and that's kind of a broad question. I'm sure
Yeah.
some states are moving faster than others, but what's the lay of the land, if you don't mind?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point, and it's also an interesting point to me. I've got four kids who have all either graduated from or are currently attending schools that currently are protected by Crisis Alert and the CENTEGIX platform. So it's definitely something I think about as a parent too.
By the way, Ryan, do you make that a prerequisite for your kids to go to school there? Do you say, hey, listen, you have to buy our stuff, otherwise I'm taking them
Yeah,
somewhere else?
absolutely. No, funny enough, it was an interesting introduction for me into the company and product when I was introduced to the company in the first place. So I was like, oh yeah, I've seen the beacons at my kid's school. I've seen the teachers wearing the badges. So it was really exciting to be part of something that I knew was actively happening in the schools. So that was great. From the lay of the land standpoint, what we're seeing, at least from a legislative and regulatory standpoint, is more and more states are starting to look at a particular law called Alyssa's Law, which essentially is a requirement for schools to have a panic button that is directly connected to law enforcement to enable response. Florida was one of the first states that we saw doing this, and it really was kind of a catalyst for a lot of the growth that we've seen and interest in our product and other panic button products. And there's a lot of other states that are actually looking at building this or implementing this as well. And so you're starting to see a lot of focus on response-based safety products being part of the standard response planning and risk management of a lot of these school districts from a state Department of Education level. One of the other things that we're really seeing that's interesting from a technology standpoint that's introduced in a lot of state legislators, state legislation bodies, and these education departments is the need for digital mapping. We kind of talked about how important having those maps are and being able to see that situation. And we're seeing more and more states either add regulations requiring open access to those maps, or seeing states invest in that through grants to their public school system to facilitate adding that as a capability in those school systems and with their local public service agencies that support them. So that's really an encouraging thing that we're seeing. We've built a lot of intelligence into our mapping solution. It's interesting because we're predominantly a safety focused company, and the mapping piece is definitely a safety focused piece, but we spend a lot of time being a mapping company too in a lot of ways. And being able to get that information out to, let's say, a police officer in their patrol car on the way to respond to an incident, and being able to, on their mobile phone, send them, here's the map of the school, here's where the emergency access is, here's an area where you can set up staging to determine what the plan's going to be for the response going forward. It's insanely valuable, and it's that strategic awareness is just hard to come by otherwise.
Yeah, Karen, do you want to elaborate on that? Because obviously mapping is near and dear to the public safety community.
Yeah, I mean, I remember a time when we had the old paper maps that you'd have to roll out, or the map books, and you'd have to flip to the page, right? And that's just for your community response. And then it comes to, school and having a large campus, and you might have like one blueprint that was printed in I don't know how many years ago, and somebody might have that, but other people don't have access to that, and you're trying to guess when you're responding. So maps are so critical. So location is the foundation of every 911 call. But location visualized is where it really makes an impact, right? And so the ability for every single person involved in that emergency response, from the teacher, the administrator, police, fire, EMS, communications. Now we're looking at the exact same image. We know where things are. You lay on it that intelligence of having a common operating picture and speaking common language to response. Again, it's just going to take those seconds and the guesswork away. Every second counts, especially in these emergency response events. And I mean, our kids are really smart too. If our kids have a map and can visualize, guess what? They can also help us, respond in. So I think in the event that somebody were to have to look at a map and, maybe teachers not available, that they can still give us that information, or they can understand what they're looking at, because a picture paints 1,000 words.
Yeah, so Ryan, this between what you and Karen are saying, this makes complete sense in my mind. What's the pushback when you're talking to schools, or kind of do you get a lot of the status quo is good enough, or I don't see the value, or is it just kind of come down to funding? Like, what's the challenge here in getting this more widely adopted?
Some of it is a funding situation. It's an interesting conversation to have with schools when their first experience with a panic button based solution is, well, I can go download an app on the App Store for fairly inexpensively and just have all my teachers download this, and we're off to the races. And it's interesting because when you start talking to schools that are doing this and we explain to them how our identify, notify, respond framework works and how that just naturally shaves seconds off of a response, it starts to click in their head as far as, oh, well, okay, I can see where this is something that is extremely valuable. Another interesting part of it is, and we see some pushback around the lift involved with installing the hardware itself, because there's a scheduling component involved. You have to time it for a certain time of the year when it provides the least disruption to instructional time. Usually that ends up being the summer. There's the training component that's involved with it, as far as how to train the teachers and staff to use the badge and what to expect when they use it, as well as how to train responders to interpret the information that they're getting from the response apps. So some of that pushback, we seem to navigate it fairly well when it comes to, well, we've done this for other schools and here's how we've done it, and it's been very successful for them, and we walk them through the onboarding timeline. And that seems to get over a lot of the pushback. Some of the other pushback, it is funding related. And of course, when you're dealing with public school districts, there's always an element of someone having an opinion that's fairly strong and wanting to push that agenda. But what we've been able to see is we've been able to partner really well with school board members, school districts, the heads of safety at school districts, to really reinforce the benefits of the product and get those approved in a lot of those districts.
You mentioned this notion of identify, notify, and respond, which seems to resonate when you're able to kind of walk a school through this framework.
Yeah.
Would you mind kind of walking us through it at a high level?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So identify is just the simple process of recognizing there's an incident that warrants immediate attention. One of the things that we work through in training is getting staff comfortable with using the badge and not being afraid to use it. Many people who are eager to push the button and see what happens, there's just as many people who are like, I don't want to be the one responsible for starting something if I'm not sure. So really helping them understand, if you identify something, use the badge, even if you're not sure. So identification is that first step. The notification is the second step that we just talked about around getting that information out to responders as quickly as possible in a discernible way so immediate action can take place. And then the response piece is having the plan to assess the situation, identify exactly what the cause of the alert is and why the button was pushed in the first place, and taking immediate action. And if you think about it from a time perspective and comparing it to the mobile panic button solutions that we're talking about previously, grabbing the badge and pushing the button is maybe a 1 to 2 second process, where maybe it's 10 to 30 seconds to find your phone, unlock it, open the app, and push the button. Once you push the button on the badge, it's maybe another second or two until the strobes start lighting up on the ceilings. The desktop takeover screens start popping up. The push notifications go out to the responders. We integrate with intercom systems, and pre-recorded intercom messages start. Versus maybe 10 to 30 seconds for somebody to realize there's an issue and manually get on the intercom and ask for help. And then another 4 to 6 seconds after that for responders to start taking action, versus like maybe another 12 to 30 seconds. So you're looking at roughly a 25 to 27 second gap just in having the badge and identifying there's a problem and starting that notification process to get that response going, versus a traditional method of calling on the intercom or sending a student or yelling out of the door. So it's really an effective framework that we have found when we pair it with the badge to get that response time down as fast as possible.
Yeah, what I appreciate about this is it's not just the badge is really what you're talking through.
Mm-hmm.
You have a whole solution here, and the badge happens to be the thing that triggers this, but
Exactly.
I really appreciate how you've thought through as an organization all these different facets, from the screens to the intercom to the strobes to obviously the, as we both know, you and Karen, every second does count. You've been meticulous in kind of optimizing that, so very well done. Karen, how do you feel about schools who just like go to the App Store and download a panic button? That has to just make you sweat.
Yeah, it's a little frightening. Education is important, right? And so a lot of people don't know what happens with 911 either. So do they really understand what is going on when you just download something that says we're going to connect you directly and they're going to immediately dispatch, right? Those are the things that really freak me out, because there's connection points that have to happen, and monitoring is great and serves a place. They do not dispatch those resources. And so understanding if there is a transfer that has to happen from monitoring into 911, or if it doesn't connect into 911 and it sits in a different screen and it's not integrated into what they're using every day, and maybe somebody hasn't logged into it. So there's so many potentials for errors to happen when you assume that a response is immediate and you don't take the time to really learn and be educated. And so, together, I think with CENTEGIX, then having all of the training take place, the education take place for both communities, from the education piece to the public safety folks, so that we can respond better together. We all know what I need to do in my part, and then I need to know what to do on my part, so that we are responding much more effectively.
Yeah, I appreciate this idea of like obviously the vendor community, the schools, public safety, really getting together and sitting down and making sure that everybody knows who does what and how this works end to end is critical for local communities. So couldn't stress that enough. Ryan, a few more questions. One is, it feels as we go through, you describe your product, there's been a lot of thought put into it, obviously manifested, I'm sure, by things you've learned over the last 6 years. Anything else that you've learned along the way? And it may not be technical. It could just be in terms of school adoption, et cetera. I don't want to lead you down the path, but any other kind of lessons learned after doing this for 12,000 schools and 6 years of effort?
Yeah, one of the things that's been really surprising to me is how well the badge has been adopted. We have seen teachers find ways to create cases on Etsy to protect the badge and decorate the badge, because we tell them not to draw on the badge. Don't stick things on your badge. So people are creating cases for the badge on Etsy, which is really interesting. It's really become ingrained as part of the instructional process to have this piece of equipment as a teacher ready to go. And it's kind of gained a little bit of fandom and life of its own, which is really kind of interesting. Another thing that's really interesting to me that I've looked at is, we think about the safety aspect from a school standpoint, but the impact on the instructional piece of schools, which is the main goal of education, is really, really interesting as well. When you look at the school year, there's 36 weeks of school in a school year. And reports show that having a disruptive student, just disruptive behavior, can cause about 2 to 4 hours of disruption a week in just an instructional time. And so if you think about it long term over those 36 weeks, it's about the equivalent of a student missing 18 days of school, but they're in school. So being able to not just help from a safety and response time standpoint, but really help bring that focus of, let's bring that instructional time in and keep the focus on the purpose of why kids are in school in the first place, is a phenomenal thing for me that I really, really appreciate.
It's a fascinating point. I haven't thought of it that way. But it's a really interesting way to think about it. I appreciate you outlining that. I can imagine, I'm not sure this is accurate, but I find it fascinating, the badge, the cases, etc. And we all, when we go into, a situation for work, whether it's speaking or you're a football player or sports or whatever, you're kind of putting on your, I don't know, armor is the right word. And I can imagine the badge is like this thing that makes teachers feel more confident, I guess, in kind of their ability to handle these types of situations at a school. It's probably symbolic in terms of like the thing that you put on. And when you put it around your neck every day and you go to school, you feel, just even if it's a little bit more safe or secure, it has to have a phenomenal impact on their mentality as they approach the school day.
Yeah, it really does. So annually we put out a school safety trends report. And one of the things that we do when we collect data for that is, anytime a teacher actually uses the badge in case of a response, we send them a survey to get an idea of how their experience was using the badge and the response that occurred afterwards. And this last year, when we did that survey and compiled the results, 98% of the staff said they feel safer, and 96% feel like they're empowered to resolve the situation. So it's interesting from the I feel safer standpoint, but it's also really interesting that teachers feel like they're empowered to own the response and can be the ones who make things happen, versus having to wait to call an office, wait for somebody to respond, and not sure when a response is actually going to occur.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's fascinating. You do the research. Speaking of that, and I know folks who we have on this podcast don't always like to give out information, but I'm just curious, like, how often do badges get pressed? Are there any particular stories of success that you would love to share? Be great to hear. Any
Yeah,
examples?
absolutely. So the badges get pressed quite a bit. I think in the 2003-2004 school year, we saw, well, I wanted to say it was I want to say it was over 180,000 badge presses or alerts during the school year across all of our customers. Wow. And what's really interesting is, if you look at the data for why the badge gets pressed, 99% of the reason the badge gets pressed is usually for common everyday issues. It's usually not a situation where it requires a public service agency response. There was a fight, somebody sprained their ankle. This happened to my son. A student was having a bad day and threw his book bag down, and a teacher was a little concerned. So we see this on a fairly regular basis, how often it gets used just for day-to-day management of school behavior and managing school security at that level. But we do see it used for public service agency use as well, and those campus threats. The vast majority of those are for critical medical emergencies. We have seen situations where a teacher or a visitor has gone into cardiac arrest, or a student breaks a bone during PE and needs to be sent to the hospital. those happen, and those are probably the most common reasons we see engagement with 911. And then we've seen stories, interestingly enough, where there are campus threats that are not necessarily something that's directly related to the school, but involves the school. Situations where a law enforcement activity bleeds onto the school, where a suspect they're trying to apprehend runs onto school grounds or something along those lines. We've even seen a campus threat issued once for wildlife. We've a bear out on the playground at an elementary school, and so he had to be locked down for that. So we see a lot of different interesting uses for it, but the vast majority are handling everyday things that you could imagine happen in schools.
Yeah. You reminded me of my daughter who's broken a collarbone. She's gotten a concussion. I don't know, twice, I think, at school. So I appreciate you sharing that information and kind of the context. The bear on the playground had to be terrifying.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the scenarios we use regularly when we think about how we build the product and what kind of things could actually happen that we need to account for in these response situations.
Yeah, mountain lions, bears, all the fun stuff. But you're right.
Yeah.
There's so often that a public safety emergency is occurring outside of the school that does impact school grounds. So, schools need to know, or something. It just takes seconds for somebody to run onto that property. And so, again, just seconds to be able to initiate or trigger that emergency event.
180,000. That's a lot. But anyway, I digress. So, Ryan, it'd be great to let's end by kind of zooming out a little bit and saying, you've been in this space for a few years. Obviously, you've seen the trajectory of this technology in schools. Pull out your crystal ball.
Yeah.
3 to 5 years out, where do you see kind of school technology, this type of technology evolving?
Yeah, so I see it going a couple of different directions in parallel. So one of the things I see is on the hardware standpoint, when we think about law enforcement activity and public service agencies and schools and student data security and just personal data protection in general, there's a lot of concern around making sure that data stays inside the school and isn't accessed by bad actors and that sort of thing. And I think we're going to see a lot of emphasis on how do we help, from a hardware standpoint, bridge the gap between these public cloud internet solutions that can potentially be open and seem a little scary, with how do we keep that data inside the school system but still react to it in a certain way. And I think we're going to see a lot more solutions on the hardware side that become part of the infrastructure of a school that allows us to use that data more effectively without having to get it out to the public internet. I think on the software side, we're living in a really interesting time right now, just in general, where AI and machine learning is becoming all of the rage and is kind of permeating everything. And I think school safety is one of those places where we're going to see that occur. We have, obviously, from the Trends Report alone, a lot of data that we take a look at a regular basis that comes through around alerts, alert types, response time, who's responding. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to take that information and start getting some more predictive analysis around what we can do with that data, where responses maybe needed more than other places, the distribution of resources and agency personnel across maybe a school district, and being able to do things like risk mitigation planning and things like that based off of that data. So I see a lot of growth in some of that smart AI ML technology to really make use of that data and bring it forward more than we are today.
Those examples, I appreciate you hitting on the hardware one as well. It's funny, it's kind of ironic or funny or interesting, the transition of school to be this technology forward, both on the hardware and software side. We think of schools as like textbooks and, pencils and pens, and my daughter's still writing stuff out. And I know on the education side it's going through a transformation, but it also sounds like on the administrative, school safety, technology and infrastructure side, it's quite the transformation.
Absolutely.
Karen, how about you? I'm going to turn this one over to you. The next 3 to 5 years, how would you like to see school safety evolve in 911?
Like I say, first of all, I wish we didn't need to think about it, but unfortunately, we live in a world in which we do. So I do think that AI is a fascinating thing to think about. And how does it start to help inform us in a predictive way? How does it also help our telecommunicators just surface information more quickly so they're not having to sift through all the noise, right? Right now, there's a lot of databases, there's a multitude of information that's flooding into them at any given time, from people making requests for service to sensors and other things that have information that can share with that telecommunicator. So I think, AI is a good way to start bringing that into their workflows, surface information for them, but also have the ability to maybe communicate back out. So tell me who's around that area that needs to know things so that I can shoot out a message, but I don't want to have to hunt and peck for that data. So, and I think that there's going to be a lot more from the education standpoint, as well as we start, you use the term, bridging the gap between how we are all working together as well. So there's a human component and then there's a technology component to this. That human component, there's still a lot of work we have to do, right? We're making decisions in silos. And so I think the future in the next 2 and 3 years is how we're all working together as humans, training together, teaching each other, just even having that awareness and that relationship, so that when these technologies are procured, purchased, implemented, etc., then we're getting the best of the best, and we're helping to future proof what our school safety looks like for our kiddos, and we're doing that together from a human and technology aspect.
Yeah, I love that. All right, Ryan, I'm going to give you the last word. Anything you want the audience to know that we didn't cover? And two, what's the best way to reach out to you and CENTEGIX?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one of the things that we didn't cover is some of the work we're doing with Rapid SOS that's coming up, especially around our immediate school assistance workflow, which I'm really, really excited about. We have been working really hard over the past year at trying to fill in the details between what happens when an alert actually gets triggered by pressing the badge and when that alert eventually is closed and the response is resolved. Getting that real-time response information, I think, is really important, and that's one of the things that we're going to be beginning at the beginning of this year of 2025, start rolling out to customers to pilot. And one of the aspects of that is how that interacts with Rapid SOS and the 911 response. It allows us to very quickly confirm, yes, this is an active assailant situation. An administrator has clicked their badge versus, let's say, just a math teacher, for example. It's maybe an SRO. We can verify that as a credible source of, hey, yes, this is something that's occurring. Or if we see multiple clicks within a radius of the initial click, oh, there's something going on that may be a mass situation that we need to respond to. So being able to get that out to Rapid SOS and get that out to 911 centers and be able to be more specific about what kind of public resources we need, public service resources we need, and what kind of response we're looking for. Is this purely a medical response? Does this need a full law enforcement presence? I think is going to be really valuable both to the 911 centers as well as the agencies that respond and the school system itself. So I'm really, really excited about where we're going with that. So yeah, this has been awesome. It's been fantastic working with the team at Rapid SOS, getting this forward, and I'm really excited about getting this out. You mentioned how can you follow us and get more information from us. We are available on LinkedIn. You can just search for CENTEGIX and follow us there. You can always go to CENTEGIX.com too. We've got all of the information about our products and the entire CENTEGIX safety platform suite, as well as you can find that trends report that we mentioned there and a lot of other helpful information around school security and some of the other verticals that we're in, like healthcare and hospitality and commercial. So a lot of good stuff.
That's great. We'll make sure some of this, like the report, we can link that to the show notes so people can find that. And thank you for pointing out Active Assailant. We're excited about launching this early in the year with you. And thanks, Ryan, for being such a great partner. We've really enjoyed working with you, and we love what you're doing around school safety and feel honored to be a part of it. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
And thanks again, Karen. Great seeing you.
You too.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Safety Gap. This podcast is powered by Rapid SOS, where we're dedicated to closing the safety gap through intelligent safety technology. If you're passionate about creating a safer, smarter world, be sure to follow The Safety Gap wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information and to catch up on past episodes, visit us at rapidsos.com.